Welcome back, welcome back. Today, Iranians went to the polls to vote on a new parliament. Unlike previous contests between reformist and conservative factions, the battle this time was set by the hardline supporters of Mr. Ahmadinejad against more pragmatic conservatives, less right-wing in that sense. Changes are not expected, not by the Iranian people or the outside world. The country's parliament, or Majlis, plays a secondary role to the Guardian Council, which has its 12 members appointed by the most powerful figure in Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. With limited choices and little hope for changes, what can we expect from today's elections? What can the people of Iran expect too? Well, joining me now is the distinguished Iranian journalist, Nazenin Ansari. Welcome back, Nazenin. Start with the basic question, I suppose, in this case. The elections results will, they say they hope to have them by next Thursday. I mean, but could they in fact give them to us now before the polls open or whatever, because the whole thing is rigged? It's not totally rigged, is it?
No, but candidates to be selected to be able to run in the elections have to go through two stages. Number one, the first stage is vetting by the Ministry of Interior for their religious credentials and their faithfulness to the rule of the jurisprudence and to the supreme leader. And then secondly, it's by the Guardian Council. So these are selected candidates, and they are sure that whoever gets in would be totally in line with the supreme leader.
Yes, I mean, there's not likely to have anyone who isn't either pragmatic conservative or very conservative. I mean, there aren't going to be any vigorous opposition party.
No, there is not going to be. There is, of course, the reformists have been, some reformists are taking part in the elections. Just for them to be able to set the stage to get mobilize the masses, they're preparing for the presidential elections. But all in all, we don't see a lot of candidates that are secular, that are capable, expert professionals. Women, we don't see a lot of candidates. The youth don't have any representation, nor do the minorities to a large extent.
That's quite a long list there, but I mean, sometimes Iranian spokesmen speak about it as a democracy. You wouldn't call it a democracy, would you?
No, I would not call it a democracy, because number one, democracy is more than one man, one vote. Democracy is based on certain principles and values that respect human rights. And the record of Iran, as far as human rights is concerned, is very abysmal. Not only are women considered half of worth of a man, but at the same time, there is no freedom of speech, there is no freedom of expression, and everything has to be done as far as allegiance to the supreme leader.
So in that situation, like today's vote, how could today's vote influence life or politics in Iran, or not at all? I mean, how could people vote in such a way to get a change in their lifestyles or whatever?
There won't be much change. And if you look at the electioneering process, most of the slogans of the election haven't been really to do much with the priorities of life in Iran today. They have also been very much geared towards the foreign policy, so that candidates have to first and foremost define their leanings, whether they want more openness with the West or not, but actually not even that, but rather how far are they away from the West and the policies of globalization and internationalism.
And this obviously is not the presidential election, that's coming up, but could these results in some way enhance or damage the president's position, Ahmadinejad? Could they say setback for Ahmadinejad? Real bad news for Ahmadinejad, or is that doesn't matter to him?
At the end of the day, Mr. Ahmadinejad is just a representative of the power group that is really controlling Iran. So whether Mr. Ahmadinejad is there or not, those behind the shadows, they're the ones who control Iran. They're the heads of the Revolutionary Guards. So whether Iran will change for the better or not will not really depend on Ahmadinejad.
Right, and in terms of when did you leave Iran, in fact?
I left in 1978.
Do you think, as you sit here and you look at the rest of the world, do you think the rest of the world understands Iran or gets it wrong?
I don't think the rest of the world really appreciates true Iran, because their frame of mind, I mean, they concentrate on the last 30 years only. And Iran is more than 30 years. We've got 5,000 years of history.
Thank you very much for being with us again, and always a joy to see you. And now, it's been another record-breaking week on the financial markets. Record highs for oil and gold, record lows for the US dollar. On Tuesday, the US Federal Reserve Bank injected $200 billion into the banking system, which seemed to stem panic, market panic, for all of 24 hours. By Wednesday, the doubts and fears were back, and the dollar began falling again. So, if 200 billion isn't enough, is there anything which the world's banking authorities can do to allay fears of a global meltdown? I'm joined now by the UK's Business Communicator of the Year, The Independent's Hamish McRae. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. In this situation, well, let's take that word meltdown. Do you think things are definitely going to get worse? Is it that serious that they are inexorably going to get worse, or can you see the light at the end of this still emerging tunnel?
I think things do get worse before they get better. But we know there is a global economic cycle, and we know we're going down towards the bottom of one. And the only question seems to me to be, is this worse than previous cycles, not as bad, or a wee bit better? I think you have to remember that though it's difficult, it's not a total catastrophe like the 1930s. Probably not as bad as the early 90s.
Right. Exactly. And in that situation, when you mention the word cycle, which we see a lot of, why are there cycles? Why is that? Why can't we have a situation where there are no cycles?
We wish we knew.
Yeah.
You know, if one could manage to eliminate this global economic cycle. But you'd be saying then, well, people wouldn't get carried away by the dot-com boom. They wouldn't get carried away by house prices shooting up. There seems to be something in human nature that means that people get over-optimistic and then they get over-pessimistic. The moment they're going into the pessimistic plunge, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, in those situations, of all the indicators, the plunging dollar, the falling stock markets, rising oil and gold and food prices, which of those indicators is most reliable? Which sums up for everything, or are they all equally reliable as indicators?
I think that each cycle is a bit different, though it's broadly the same. And I think in this cycle, some of those indicators are unusual and flashing alarm bells. For example, the price of food. We haven't had anything like that since the Korean War, the commodity crisis then. But there are some other signals in this cycle which are not too bad. For example, world share prices are down a fair bit, but they're not down nearly as much as they were in 2001, 2002, 2003. So I think that there is no single indicator. You look at all of them and then you say, is this really terrible or just a bit grim?
Right, and what about our viewers all around the world? I mean, is the situation you're describing going to be the same about food or about something else all around the world? It's not, is it? It's going to vary around the world, isn't it?
One of the important ways in which this world economy now is different to the world economy of 10 years ago when we were heading down then, is that India, China and the rest of the developing world is actually pulling things along so that even if the US goes down, there's plenty of demand elsewhere. There's a link, sure. But last year, for the first time for 150 years, China added more demand to the world economy than the United States. It's a huge seismic shift of power. And I think that goes on, and that keeps the world growing through this downturn in a way that would not have been the case 10 years ago.
And you said that growth in the next 5 years, when you focusing on where we're going to be in 5 years' time, that the growth will come from Asia and so on. High oil prices, you say, you think oil will go to 120?
I think oil at 120, well, we're nearly there, aren't we?
Yes,
we're at 111. I
So
think
maybe it'll go higher then.
Oh, I think oil will remain pretty expensive for the rest of our days. There's huge global demand, a tight global supply. It doesn't go up forever, but it'll be quite expensive.
And all of the things you're talking about are all within the range of, there could be something that we haven't planned for, like some catastrophic war or other events that would obviously affect what you're saying.
Oh, if we're going to have World War III, everything, all this talk of the economic cycle and all that just disappears out of the window. But I think that short of a huge global catastrophe, what we're seeing is a classic downturn. A bit different from other ones, but then they're always a bit different. But we'll have a couple of years of trudge, and then we'll have a pull-up, a slow pull-up afterwards. Not the end of the world at all.
Not the end of the world. Well, that's a happy note to end on. Thank you. Marvellously clear in what you're saying and so on. Thank you very much, Hamish. We look forward to welcome you back.
Thank you.
And on that happy note that it's not the end of the world after all, do join me again in 7 days for another edition of Frost Over the World. Until then, top of the day.